I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities, and during that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so, at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do, and I'm a team player. So.
It seems like a lot of them are kind of being told what to do. There are other people pulling the strings above them.
We're working with WNBA owners that also own NBA teams, and then more broadly, the NBA owners on what the right valuation of WNBA teams are going forward, what the best way is to operate that league. It's very integrated now with the NBA. There's aspects over time under Commissioner Engelbert's direction where they're still fairly integrated. They share the same office space with the NBA, but under her direction, we've added some separate departments, like, for example, where they're doing their own marketing right now. They have their own basketball operations department. So it's a balance of things, but I'd say we're collectively looking at all those issues, figuring out the right way to operate going forward.
I look seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it in Iowa. You see these TV ratings. And then what?
Stakeholders, coaches, governors, and general managers. Those are the people calling all the shots. What actually happens is that we have a competition committee for stakeholders, coaches, governors, and general managers, and that competition committee is the committee that dictates the state of the game. Officiating in the WNBA became as hot button of an issue as any. Heated debates surrounding the league's physicality dominated the headlines, particularly when Indiana Fever star rookie Caitlin Clark was subject to several intentional fouls. The referees who were refereeing the Fever and Liberty game, that one of the referees seems like his only experience was actually refereeing high school games.
This is about what I will personally label the idiocy of Team USA women's basketball. How dare you make this decision? It's stupid.
We're obviously marketing around all of our players, but I think Caitlin's lifting everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Our arenas are packed, our viewership. I mean, this is a key part of why I was hired, is to look at how to bring in new viewers, new fans, the demographic. We're one of the most diverse demographics in sports, both on the court and now our viewership.
Yeah. It rocks, by the way, when you're in the stadium. We went and loved it.
If the WNBA is not rigged, they're doing a great job of making it look like it's rigged. Because if you guys didn't see the referees literally, they made a bad call. And if you guys have ever played sports, you know that, like, when a referee knows they've screwed up, they will do everything they can to not talk to the players. They are running away from the Indiana Fever players. As you can see, like, it's not just Caitlin Clark, it's Sophie Cunningham. And he's like, no, I'm not looking. No. And bad refs, because again, I live in a country where there are good refs and the good refs know who they are, but the standard of refereeing is absolutely shocking. And like I've seen referees be talking to coaches, and then mid-conversation, just when they know they're in the wrong, mid-conversation just turn around and start ignoring players. If it wasn't for the fact that the WNBA is a professional sports league, this would be funny if the WNBA was not a pro sports league. Straight up. It would be funny.
Well, let me clarify first, because it's proxy season, right? No CEO do you just put the base pay in there. You put their bonus, you put their stock options, you put everything. Caitlin has the ability to make up to $500,000 just in WNBA wages this year. So, of course, they're just looking at a base which is collectively bargained. And actually, it's low. Because she's the #1 pick, she'll make a little more than that. But she also has millions and millions of dollars of endorsements. She's actually, because she declared to become pro, her endorsements are higher in dollar value. She has a global platform now, not just a U.S. platform. So she's going to do just fine, as will the top players in the league, as every league does. Also, there's comparisons to the men. Those men's leagues are 75 to 120 years old. We're tipping off our 28th season. I would say if you looked at them 28 seasons in, we're further ahead. But I realize we still have a lot of work to do. And it's all about the ecosystem.
The refereeing in the WNBA is the worst in any sports. I see high school fucking basketball refs call better games than these WNBA refs. I'm being serious. There's a real problem. You have too many people in the league coming out and saying the refereeing sucks. And it does suck. Watching a game is so horrible sometimes. It's like, oh my God, do these refs know that they are like paid to make good calls?
I think that I have a huge passion for the game of basketball. I have a huge passion for women's leadership. And I think, you know, I'm really excited to be entering into the WNBA commissioner role as a real platform for all of these players, the owners, the whole basketball ecosystem, quite frankly, to drive it, you know, to the next level. Clearly, the biggest opportunities for the league are to enhance the fan experience, the player experience, for there to be a recognition of how important a time in women's leadership and the W's role in that. So this is just such a great time for everyone to rally around these WNBA players, attend the games, sponsor the WNBA, use it as part of your women's leadership platform. I think there's so much potential upside. I'm very excited.
Kelsey Plum is pissed off. And she's pissed off because she's not getting the foul calls that she believes other players in the league are getting. And let's go to the tape. I want you to see this because I love it when an athlete gets to the point of righteous indignation. When an athlete says, I'm going to be fined and I realize that and I don't care. I got to get this off my chest. I'm ready to listen. And believe me, Kelsey Plum has some things to say.
I'm just saying this, but like, I drive more than anyone in the league. So to shoot 6 free throws is absurd. And then I got scratches on my face, I got scratches on my body, and these guards on the other team get these ticky-tack fouls, and I'm sick of it. I get fouled like that every possession. Rikini gets fouled like that in the post all the time, and they don't call it. 6 free throws. I'm playing 40 minutes, touching the paint almost every play is absurd. I'll get fined for that, and that's fine, but I mean, and I needed to make more shots like late game, but I mean, they're fouling the out of me every single play.
They're fouling the shit out of her on every single play. Scratches on my face, scratches on my body. The other team gets these ticky-tacky foul calls. She said she prays before the game. She's nice to the referees. What does this woman have to do? She's a former #1 overall pick in the WNBA. She's a former 6th woman of the year. 3-time All-Star. Kelsey Plum, I don't know. Some people are reading in between the lines on this about her complaints about the officiating. Is there more to it? Is she trying to make a bigger statement about a league-wide problem? I don't know.
Where, I guess, some trash talking entered in. But now it seems on some social media channels to have taken a darker turn, a more menacing turn, where race has been introduced into the conversation. Where, not personally, it would seem, but their fan bases are involved in saying some very uncharitable things about the other.
Well, the one thing that's great about the league right now, we do sit at this intersection of culture and sport and fashion and music. Like, the WNBA players are really looked at now as kind of cultural icons.
True.
And when you have that, you have a lot of attention on you. There's no more apathy. Everybody cares. It is a little that Bird Magic moment, if you recall, from 1979 when those two rookies came in from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another.
So this is where I'm really speaking from. And that was very, very damaging for me. And so I'm not, I'm only using that as a reference, but that's really where I'm coming to now. And that's where I'm speaking from. Back then as a player, I couldn't see what I can see now. Now I'm a retired couch potato, so I'm watching, observing the game in a whole new light. And I really feel like this is an important message for me to submit. I just feel like I need to create this PSA before I continue with my commentary, which I will continue. In the NBA, I see how much the officials, the officiating, controls everything. It's the most critical aspect of the game. It shouldn't be, but it is. It's the most absolute critical component of wins and losses determined in the NBA. And I wish now the same thing that I wished back then for myself, which was that there was a way to remove this bias from the officiating. I wish that it could be more fair. How can it be more fair?
They say power corrupts. But what happens when the people entrusted to elevate the game are the ones dragging it down from the inside? This wasn't just a matter of bad officiating or questionable leadership. It was the unraveling of an entire structure built on image over integrity. And it all came crashing down the moment Adam Silver, known for his composed demeanor and reserved tone, stood in front of the world and confirmed the rumors that had been circulating for years. What began as whispers about missed calls and shady foul differentials quickly escalated into something far more calculated. Silver didn't hold a press conference because he wanted to. He did it because he had no choice. The league had reached a boiling point. Too many eyes were on them, too many questions that could no longer be dodged. The evidence was too loud to silence. There was a list, a real one, with names, with receipts, and it traced back to the very top. Cathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner who had often been praised for her background in leadership and finance, was now at the center of an unraveling controversy. The accusations weren't vague, they weren't theoretical. Silver laid out the structure plainly. Referees had been rewarded, not for being right, but for being useful. Calls weren't evaluated based on fairness or accuracy. They were judged on alignment, how closely the game reflected the story the league wanted to tell. It started with patterns. At first, fans chalked it up to coincidence, then, over time, to incompetence. But the same plays kept happening, the same silence from the referees, the same cold treatment toward one player in particular, Indiana Fever rookie Caitlin Clark. She didn't come into the league quietly. Her arrival set records. Her performances filled arenas. But instead of celebrating her, the league began to flinch. Clark wasn't just scoring, she was dominating. And somewhere deep within the league's leadership, that became a problem. Not because she broke rules, but because she broke the narrative. The structure that had been quietly built behind the scenes wasn't designed for one player to take over the spotlight. Especially not so quickly. That's when the list began circulating internally. Silver's investigation revealed a system of bonuses and perks tied not to quality of officiating, but to the ability to steer the game. Refs were told to keep things balanced. Not balanced as in fair, balanced as in unpredictable. Keep the games close. Avoid blowouts. Don't let one player steal the show. The instructions were subtle, but their meaning was clear. And those who followed through were rewarded. For Engelbert, it was a way to manage optics, keep fans guessing, preserve the illusion of competition, but the cost was enormous. What started as small nudges in decision-making turned into a full-blown culture of manipulation. Refs stopped calling clear contact, players like Clark were left unprotected, coaches noticed, players complained, fans kept receipts. The breaking point came during a highly watched game between the Indiana Fever and the New York Liberty. The officiating wasn't just questionable, it was embarrassing. Missed calls, ignored fouls, a referee who looked visibly unqualified. Social media exploded. Video clips circulated within minutes. The phrase rigged trended. And then came the footage. Referees literally avoiding players after making a bad call, running away rather than explaining themselves. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so serious. Behind the scenes, Silver's office had already begun compiling a dossier. Internal communications, travel records, bonus allocations. Everything was being logged. And when the evidence reached a certain point, Silver made the call. He couldn't wait any longer. The league's integrity was on the line. At the press briefing, Silver didn't shout. He didn't need to. His words did the damage. He confirmed that a system had been developed under Engelbert's leadership, one that directed, incentivized, and rewarded specific officiating behaviors. It wasn't a rogue element. It wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a structure, and it had been operating in plain sight. The reaction was instant. News outlets dropped everything to cover it. Talk shows shifted their schedules. Former players who had stayed silent for years suddenly had stories to share. Some described closed-door meetings with referees. Others recalled being told to tone it down or warned not to draw too much attention. For the first time, the patterns they had all noticed made perfect sense. But it wasn't just words. Silver's team had the documentation. Emails between league personnel, notes from internal meetings, referee assignments cross-referenced with game outcomes. In game after game, players who should have drawn multiple fouls didn't even reach the line. And the referees responsible? They were the same ones getting better travel perks, postseason assignments, and end-of-year bonuses. Silver didn't stop with a statement. He announced an independent investigation and called for Engelbert's administrative leave. A temporary committee would take over her duties. The internal review team would now include experts from outside the sport, people with no loyalty to any current WNBA executive. Transparency would be mandatory. Still, Engelbert remained silent. No public apology, no press conference, no denial. And that silence did more damage than anything else. Because now, even those who had once defended her were questioning everything. What had been dismissed as just the way sports work was suddenly exposed for what it really was, a power structure that prioritized control over competition. Players started speaking up. Kelsey Plum, a decorated star in the league, had already expressed frustration over officiating. Now her comments resurfaced, framed in a whole new light. She had said she got hit on every play. She had the bruises to prove it. She said she drove to the basket more than anyone in the league and barely got to the line. Her words, once seen as venting, now sounded like testimony. And Caitlin Clark? Her rookie season took on a different weight. All the moments fans had called unfair, all the physical play that was never penalized. It was no longer just a rough welcome to the pros. It was systemic, calculated. She became the symbol of everything that was wrong and everything that needed to be fixed. But Clark didn't lash out. When asked for her reaction, she simply said she hoped the league could grow the right way. It was a quiet sentence, but it carried the force of a manifesto. She didn't want revenge, she wanted a fair game. The fallout from Adam Silver's announcement didn't just shake the WNBA, it rippled through the entire basketball world. Coaches who had once towed the league's line now found themselves questioning decisions they'd shrugged off before. Sports analysts who dismissed criticism of officiating as sour grapes had to reckon with the truth. And fans, diehard supporters who had invested years into watching the league grow, were left stunned by what they heard. The most damaging part wasn't the existence of the list, it was how methodically it had been used. Every name on that list wasn't just a referee, they were a gatekeeper, a hand guiding the outcome of games without ever touching a ball. And the rewards weren't buried under secrecy, they were right there in the books. Travel upgrades, postseason bonuses, media exposure. A quiet system that rewarded control, not competency. The real revelation was the intent. The goal wasn't to improve fairness or protect players. It was to manage narratives, keep certain games close, push specific matchups, avoid letting any one player look untouchable. And when Caitlin Clark became too dominant, she was treated not as a rising star, but as a disruption. A problem to be managed. The internal memos were the smoking gun. Some described maintaining parity. Others encouraged whistle restraint during high-visibility games. In one note, officials were reminded to avoid skewing momentum. That phrase, skewing momentum, was the code that rang loudest, because anyone who's ever played or watched sports knows what that means. Let them play. Let the contact go. Let the star player fight for everything. And in this case, that star was Caitlin Clark. Silver's report noted that Clark's free throw rate dropped significantly in games officiated by referees on the list. She was hit more, called less, and worked harder for every point. It wasn't random. It was the result of a directive, one born in a boardroom carried out on the court. And for Engelbert, that directive was her legacy. It wasn't always like this. When Engelbert took the commissioner role, she was praised for bringing a business-minded approach to the league. She promised growth, innovation, and a player-first culture. But somewhere along the way, the vision blurred. Growth became a numbers game. Optics became everything. And when Clark arrived with more attention than anyone before her, the system buckled. Instead of embracing the attention, the league tried to spread it around artificially. They leaned on control. They enforced balance. And when that didn't work, they used officiating as the equalizer. The result? A league that looked unpredictable on the surface, but behind the scenes, followed a tightly managed script. Silver's announcement included a plan for reform, third-party oversight, transparency on referee grading, and a full audit of every bonus and travel perk issued in the past 2 seasons. It wasn't just about restoring trust, it was about tearing down the system that had allowed all of this to happen in the first place. The committee replacing Engelbert wasted no time. They initiated random referee assignments, removed all bonus structures tied to game outcomes, and published officiating reviews for each game. The public could now see how every call, or non-call, was evaluated. For the first time in years, transparency wasn't just promised, it was practiced. And while the reforms were praised, they couldn't erase what had already happened. The games that were tilted, the players who were overlooked, the wins and losses that no longer felt honest. Every fan had a moment in their memory now colored with doubt. Every celebration came with a question. Did they win? Or were they allowed to win? Sponsors quietly paused campaigns. Merchandise that was set to launch during key games was delayed. Media outlets demanded interviews Engelbert would not give. Her silence, once strategic, had become deafening. And behind closed doors, legal teams were working nonstop, reviewing emails, performance reviews, travel records. Nothing was off limits now. One particular revelation came from a retired referee who had left the league the year prior. In a sworn statement, he described being pulled into a meeting before a primetime game. He was shown video of Clark's drives to the basket and told in no uncertain terms to let her play through it. The message was clear: no bailouts, no extra whistles. And he wasn't the only one. Several referees came forward with similar experiences. Some described incentives tied to keeping games within a specific scoring margin. Others recalled being praised not for correct calls, but for their game management. One even revealed that missing a call in favor of balance earned him a top assignment the following week. That wasn't a fluke. That was the system working exactly as intended, and that's what Silver made clear. This wasn't a rogue operation. This wasn't a couple of referees acting out. It was an engineered loop of incentives that favored obedience over objectivity. Engelbert, while not directly handing out payments, had built the framework. She created the culture. She picked the people. And now the consequences were undeniable. Clark's teammates had noticed the treatment too. Several of them spoke off the record, saying they had begged referees for protection that never came. They adjusted their play. They tried to shield her. But when the game itself is tilted, strategy only goes so far. And fans, they had receipts. Entire highlight reels began circulating online, showing missed calls, uncalled contact, and moments when referees literally turned their backs. Every clip felt different now. Every shrug from an official, every ignored complaint from a player, it all fit the pattern. Engelbert's defenders tried to pivot. They claimed the system was meant to protect the league's reputation, to avoid blowouts, to make every game exciting. But fans weren't buying it, because what's more damaging to a league's reputation than finding out the excitement was fake? The problem wasn't just the list, it was what the list represented. A belief that fans couldn't handle truth, that players needed to be nudged, that narratives were more important than fairness. And at the heart of that belief was a commissioner who forgot that sports are built on trust. Silver, usually a behind-the-scenes figure when it came to the WNBA, stepped into the light. He made it clear that this wasn't just about cleaning house, it was about rebuilding it. He promised full transparency and accountability, and while it wouldn't undo what was done, it was the first step towards something better. Players across the league responded, some with cautious optimism, others with full-blown relief. For years, they had felt the system pressing on them, shaping games they thought were theirs to decide. Now they knew why. And now, they had a chance to change it. Engelbert's office was cleared. Her name removed from official communications. Her social media went dark. She became a ghost in a story that once had her at the center. But even in absence, her shadow loomed large. Because the damage didn't disappear. It lingered in every missed call, every unfair outcome, every silent whistle. Clark, meanwhile, kept playing. Her game didn't change, but the court around her did. The calls started coming. The hits were finally acknowledged. And for the first time, she looked free. Free to play, free to lead, free to shine without being dimmed by the system designed to keep her from standing out. The road ahead was still long, but something had shifted. Not just in how games were played, but in how they were seen, no longer through the haze of suspicion, no longer through the lens of manipulation, but with clarity, with accountability, with eyes wide open. What remained in the aftermath wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning. And for the WNBA, that reckoning had arrived with full force. The league, once shielded by its underdog status and growing popularity, could no longer lean on promises and platitudes. The curtain had been pulled back, and what the public saw was a machine that had chosen manipulation over merit. As investigations expanded, deeper layers began to emerge. This wasn't just about referee conduct or travel perks. It was about how the business side of the league had begun bleeding into the basketball side. Financial projections were tied to matchups. Viewership reports dictated who got primetime exposure. Narrative balance wasn't just a marketing tool, it was a mandate. Executives reviewing Engelbert's tenure discovered performance incentives that were suspiciously timed. Some referees received bonuses following nationally televised games, even when their accuracy scores were below average. Certain teams, especially those with high-profile stars, received more promotional coverage but far less on-court protection. And when questions were raised internally, the responses were vague, laced with terms like brand alignment and fan engagement strategy. The messaging was always the same: keep things competitive, keep it close, keep everyone guessing. But that strategy had created a dangerous consequence. By avoiding dominance, the league had undermined excellence. By suppressing standout performances, it had punished greatness. And in trying to manufacture parity, it had broken trust. The moment Adam Silver made the list public, redacted names, redacted affiliations, but undeniable evidence, it became impossible to deny. Everyone in the basketball world began looking at the last 2 seasons through a new lens. The missed game winners, the unexplained foul calls, the overtime thrillers that seemed just a little too perfect. What once felt exciting now felt orchestrated. Silver's independent oversight team released its first round of results within weeks. Several referees were quietly dismissed. Others were reassigned to development leagues pending further review. The league clarified that all referee assignments would now be made by a rotating committee with no ties to the commissioner's office. Bonuses for game management were permanently eliminated, replaced with performance-based reviews conducted by third-party auditors with no stake in league outcomes. The new leadership team also implemented game tracking software to analyze whistle patterns. Every call, or non-call, was reviewed within 24 hours of game completion. Public reports were released after each round of games, offering fans a transparent look at how officiating decisions were being judged. It was accountability in action, late, but at last visible. But even as reforms swept through the system, Engelbert's absence remained a focal point. Speculation swirled. Would she speak? Would she fight back? Or had she accepted that the weight of the evidence had buried any defense? Insiders reported that her legal team was working around the clock, not to deny the facts, but to minimize liability. Still, she offered no statement, no appearance, not even a denial. In her silence, others spoke up. Former players, retired referees, league employees who had quietly left years ago. They described a culture where questions were discouraged and success was tied to loyalty. One former employee recalled being told not to bring up officiating complaints during meetings. Another described having travel approvals rejected for questioning referee performance metrics. What had started as a simple investigation into inconsistent foul calls had now expanded into a full-blown audit of league governance. And through it all, Caitlin Clark remained the face of the turning point. Clark never asked to be the center of this. She never called for investigations or named names, but her presence had forced the issue. Her game had revealed the cracks, and her quiet consistency had become the standard by which the league was now being measured. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Clark had drawn record crowds, driven unprecedented viewership, and elevated the WNBA to new heights, all while being held back by a system that feared her success. Now, as that system was being dismantled, she stood at the center not as a victim, but as a catalyst. When asked again weeks later about the fallout, she answered with the same calm poise. She didn't gloat. She didn't condemn. She simply said she hoped the league would keep moving forward, that players deserved a fair game, that fans deserved the truth, and that if any good could come from all this, it would be a league rebuilt on trust, not control. Silver, for his part, remained deeply involved. He continued to hold regular briefings, often unscheduled, to update the public on the status of reforms. He reiterated that the goal was not to single out scapegoats, but to uproot a culture that had valued outcome management over competitive integrity. Some critics argued it was too little, too late, that fans would never truly trust the product again, that sponsors would pull back, that growth would stall. But the early signs suggested otherwise. Game attendance began ticking back up. Viewership remained steady. And most importantly, the players, those who had endured the manipulated structure, were finally able to compete on a level playing field. The game itself began to change. Referees adjusted quickly. Calls became sharper, more consistent. Players noticed. So did fans. What once felt rigged now felt honest. Not perfect, but real. And that authenticity, slowly but surely, started winning back the trust that had been lost. Engelbert's name, while no longer on league communications, still lingered in headlines. Journalists continued digging. Investigations into other sports organizations quietly began, looking for similar patterns. And while no formal charges had yet been filed, the implication was clear. The reckoning wasn't over. The story of this scandal wasn't just about one commissioner. It was about a philosophy, a belief that managing perception was more important than honoring performance, that the best way to grow was to manufacture excitement rather than let it unfold naturally, that a narrative was more valuable than the truth. But the truth won, because in the end, no memo can fake greatness, no bonus can manufacture momentum, and no list can suppress the game forever. The players fought through it. The fans called it out, and leaders like Silver, however delayed, finally listened. Now, with the system exposed and the house being rebuilt, the WNBA stands at a new crossroads, one where every whistle, every call, every decision must now live in the light, not for appearances, but for the game.